And this is Let's Talk Dispatch.
I do. You're gonna do it really well.
And I believe the world needs more dispatchers.
Around in the mud, blood, and beer.
Years that I'm not working 4th of July. 4th of July.
Say community policing, right? What about community dispatch?
So on this show, with the help of my guests, we will educate, empower, and support the heroes behind the headset. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode here on Let's Talk Dispatch with me, Ashley, the Raspy Dispatcher. Thank you all so much for joining me today. I'm super excited. It's May. Shout out Justin Timberlake. It's going to be May. And I'm going into the summer months. And these summer months are full of new, different things for me. I'm going to be this month actually on a virtual panel. Goldline Support is hosting a virtual conference, Goldline Virtual Conference, which I am speaking at. This will be my first ever speaking event other than me in my room with my camera. So me and Casey Reeves are going to be teaming up May 17th through 18th. We will be presenting on the 18th to talk about promoting yourself within your comm centers and after and outside of your comm centers. So if you have not registered for that virtual conference, make sure to do so. It's free at goldlinesupport.com. And if for some reason, staffing, you got other things to do, you can't be there for the live event, registering gets you access to the recorded sessions as well. Excuse me. So don't think you have to be available in order to attend. You can check out the recordings as well. It's really one of the awesome things about this line of work. All these virtual conferences, I think, are amazing. In June, I will be at MENA. So if you are going to be at that conference, I'll be there with a booth, selling merch, setting up a mobile podcast for the first time, as well as sitting on a panel with some amazing folks talking about being your authentic self in these comm centers. So a lot of change, a lot of pushing my comfort zones. And I can't even talk today, so there's that. Also, of course, if you're listening, please make sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a review. Those reviews really help get us in front of folks who need to hear the things we're talking about. You can also be a guest by heading over to theraspydispatcher.com, picking a date and time that works for you. Super simple. We'll jump on whenever you're available to have a chat. And you can also tell your story in an email or filling out one of our pages that have just a little box that you could share your story, and that's under Tell Your Story on our podcast section, and that can be as anonymous as you'd like. So with all that being said, my guest today is a dispatcher with over 25 years of experience, so naturally she has had her hand in every little bit of all the things in the dispatch world. She's going to join me today to talk about the community we serve as dispatchers and her experience dispatching in a rural county with limited resources available, especially for folks who are experiencing a mental health crisis. My guest today is Susan. Hi, Susan. How are you?
Hi, Ashley. I'm doing well. How are you?
I feel like I'm struggling all of a sudden. I keep having to clear my throat. I was like, I was fine 2 minutes ago, but struggling now.
Need a little more coffee.
I know. I'm like, that is what is in here always, right? Oh, man. Well, thank you so much for being willing to jump on with me today. You reached out to me through email, interested in coming on the show. And I'm super excited you did. And I'm super excited to have this conversation.
Yeah, I was, well, like I was telling you, I was shocked how quickly you responded. And then I was like, oh, wow, I might actually get to do this. This is pretty cool. So yeah, I've listened to your podcast, and to be a part of this is actually it's quite exciting for me. So thank you for having me.
Oh, thank you, Susan. I really appreciate that. Well, tell us a little bit how you got into public safety and kind of your journey.
So I originally took the test when I was 18, and I didn't make the typing test requirement. So you know, like any 18-year-old, I was like, well, forget it. I'm not going to do this.
They don't want me then. They missing out. Yeah.
Right. So I spent a few more years doing some other things, and I decided, you know what, I really do want to do that. So I kept going back and practicing until I could pass the test. And I had never been in a dispatch center before. I don't even think the shows were popular at that time, you know, like they have all the movies and shows right now. So when I first walked in, my very first day, it was a swing shift, and I saw all these computers and keyboards and monitors, and I was like, uh-oh, what did I get myself into? But it only took me probably about 6 months before I was like, you know what? I can't believe I was doing anything else ever. This is where I want to be. This is where I need to be. So, and I've had that bug ever since.
That's amazing. So when you walked in at 18, 19 years old, how many screens were they using back then? Was it like 2 and now it's like 30? Or
well, yes. So actually there were probably 5 monitors, but there were 3 separate computers that you had to use. Like all your state queries were on one machine, which had its own keyboard. And then your CAD stuff had 2 keyboards, just one monitor. And then there was another thing to do like records checks. It was just a lot of stuff going on. And, you know, when you walk into a dispatch center and you're new, and if it's an environment you've never been exposed to before, the first inclination is to be like, oh, well, it's easy, because that's what people think about us, right? We just sit around drinking coffee and talking on the phone. But it looks easy because the people in that center are rocking it, like because they know what they're doing. That's why it looks easy. Sorry, I get off on my little tangents there.
Oh, no, please. We are tangent approved here. We love it. We love tangents at the Ask Me Dispatcher, because I love talking to folks who have been doing this, because it changes so much, and everyone does this same job so differently. And the fact that folks were using 3 different computers, I say all the time, I could not do this job how folks did it back in the day, because it's challenging with my tech. I couldn't imagine doing it with less technology. And it's kind of like the folks who call us and expect, you know, teleportation and like instant gratification. And it's just like, we're still working with limited technology in 2023. I couldn't imagine doing this 10, 15 years ago, because we're just getting rapid SOS and rapid deploy type systems. Text 911 is just coming out there into the world. And back in the day, it was like map book, you know, you couldn't map your officers. It was just all these things that we thankfully take for granted because we have access to them, you know?
Yes. But yeah, you're totally right. All of the new emerging technology, which it absolutely does help us, those tools, but it's another layer that I think prevents people from, you know, people who've been there for a long time don't want to learn the new technology, which I don't blame them. Like, you know, well, I know what I'm doing, especially a dinosaur like me. You've been doing this for so long. I don't need you to tell me how to use another system. It does make things a little more complicated than it needs to be sometimes.
Yeah.
And at the end of it, as dispatchers, we are still counting on our call taking skills, and I'm going to use this word for lack of a better word, cooperation from the callers to extract the information that we need. And, you know, when someone's having the worst day of their life, they're not usually like calm and collected and giving us the information that we desperately need to get them the right help.
You know, it is really an art, right? Getting someone to answer your questions. And sometimes they're not wanting to because they just don't want to. Like they're making it difficult. And then there's folks who are really in crisis and have a hard time being able to, you know, follow the directions and answer the questions. And my fiance, actually, yesterday we were kind of talking about it. I had a bit of a caller who was just like not giving me the answers and not being able to articulate a crime. And I was kind of spoon feeding them like, look, I need you to tell me something. We can't just contact people to contact people. We got to have a reason. And if you can't articulate a reason, I can't articulate a reason to go. And it's just like a whole thing. And, you know, she works in kind of a crisis response situation where she works. And she was like, I like to tell people, I know you're doing your best. And I was like,
I like that a lot, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, like kind of, I was like, I think I'm going to take that because I could see me trying to get, and then just hard stopping them with just that phrase. I know you're doing your best. And then following it up with, I need you to answer this. And I think for those who are listening, and like, I like taking little tidbits, like I like sitting near people because hearing them ask questions, because they might ask it a different way or say a phrase that, like that, I know you're doing your best. I need you to tell me this. Like,
right. It's not going to escalate the situation and make the caller more irritated with us, right? Because
exactly. And a lot of times callers and people in general, we just like to be heard, and we like to be acknowledged. And I'm not getting the word gratified. Feel like I am doing my best. I'm glad you see that. Okay, here's the answer to my question, Yeah. So just
I really like that. I actually wrote it down. So
I know, right? Yeah. Last night I was like, I guess there is a reason I'm keeping you around.
So it's funny that you say that, because something someone said to me a couple weeks ago was, and it was just as simple as, I see you. And it really touched me, because I've been having some, well, it's a period of life where I'm in a transition and like transforming, but still trying to stay involved in public safety as much as I can. I've been doing it in this community for 25 years, and I'm looking to expand on a larger scale, because
very right.
Well, I pursued an opportunity that I had for explore. I can't even think of the word, for my education, and in that process, I really my confidence was boosted, where I was like, you know what, I can continue to serve on a larger scale and do something that's still serving my base community, and then adding to that. So for me to be traveling a couple weeks ago, and someone looked at me and in one of the centers and said, I see you. It was very touching.
That is so awesome. And I think it's, especially for folks who are kind of on their way out of answering the phones and out of the, in the line of duty type of scenario as a dispatcher, like, you can move on at any point and know that you have done your due dil. You've done your service, you've saved lives, you impacted lives. And whenever that exit sign is lighting up for you, answer it, do your research, find opportunities. There are so many ways that we can take these skills and translate them into the world. Halcyon just posted on LinkedIn, Halcyon Frank, and the title was like, oh, the places you'll go. And it just kind of had different titles of things folks can go out and do in the world who have been dispatchers, project manager, and just kind of all these different avenues folks can go. And I think it's scary for us to think like, hey, we have the shortages, right? It's kind of like, if I leave, I'm going to be messing up my comm center. I kind of like them some days, so I don't want to do that. And then there's just the act of, like, my job is here 24/7. Like, I'm needed. And there's that security with it, but you can do so much more outside of a comm center. We need you here, but we need happy dispatchers. So if you're at the point, for whatever reason, that you're done with it, you're moving on, you're ready to do something new, I applaud you and I wish you the best. And I think that is one reason I love talking to folks on here too, is getting folks in the door, but getting folks out of the door too. There is life after dispatch.
There absolutely is. And so we do pigeonhole ourselves, though, and say, you know what, well, that's all I know how to do. And that phrase, I'm just a dispatcher, drives me nuts. You are not. You are a problem solver. You are a counselor. You are the getter of all things, right? Like, you are handling emergency management, like, at its core. So there are so many things that we shortchange ourselves on and say, like, oh, I can't do anything else. This is all I'm ever going to be able to do.
Yeah, I tell my detective sergeant all the time, I'm waiting for my
badge, right?
My badge. I'm waiting for my stripes, I'm a detective.
Right? Absolutely, yes.
Yeah. D for dispatch is detective. Yeah.
It's also one of the things that I loved the most about dispatching is, we got to be nosy on purpose. I get to ask for all the tea. Like, I need to know all of this
intentional
stuff.
nosiness. It is.
Well, like we were talking about before, you still get the adrenaline rush, but I don't have to be there in person. I'm not physically in danger. Now, physiologically, though, our mental health. So one of the questions that you posed to me is, what would I say to someone who's new or considering going into dispatch?
Yeah.
And because it's changed who I am so much over the years, my advice to myself right now, if I could go back in all those years and say, hey, is to really be very aware and cognizant of taking care of your own mental health and having an outlet or a place where you can process those things. It's something that's so prevalent these days, right? Mental health, but it also impacts us, and you can't expect a being to just ingest all of that and process all of that information day after day after day, and it doesn't have some kind of toll in your mind and your heart.
So true. And you know, it's funny because I'm closer to baby dispatcher than, you know, than adult dispatcher in my years. And I remember I had a really good academy. You know, I had a really good experience, and it's probably one of the main reasons I'm doing the things that I'm doing now, is because I had a great experience at my first department. And I remember them bringing in our peer support folks, a couple detectives that were the lead peer support. Phones were on 24/7. You can call them whenever. And they were kind of giving us all this info. And you're sitting there as a new person. It's kind of like when they come in and talk about ergonomics, and you're like, you know, I'm going to say how I want to say it. I'm fine. I'm going to keep my feet above my head and reach from down here. And you don't pay as close attention to it when you're new, because you're like, that's not going to bother me. That's not going to happen to me. I'm going to be fine. And then for me, I'm like 5 years in, and I'm like, oh, I really need to take better care of myself. And that looks different for everybody. For me right now, it's like I really got to get back into working out. I got to get back into a better, healthy routine. Shift work is tough. I mean, it is. It's 12 hours, and it's a long thing, and it's hard to get a routine down, but those things really do impact our mental health and our self-care and just being aware of them. Because 5 years in, I'm like, oh, you know, I should have been taking care of myself 4 years ago, and now I gotta catch up. So I totally
now I have this kink in my neck because, you know,
although
do people still have actual handsets,
right? I keep looking at, you know, my family at this angle, and they're like, what are you doing? I'm like, what do you mean? That's not how it's supposed to look. But it's true. Like, really being aware of yourself and what your needs are early is going to go a long way in your career.
Right. And then what I originally, when I reached out to you and I wanted to talk specifically about being able to provide mental health care in rural areas is a difficult thing. And so I segue into that because if I am in a place where I recognize what my mental health means, when we have callers that are, you know, that we're speaking to on the phone, and they might be going through a crisis, I think that we can exercise a little bit more compassion and patience with understanding, like, these people aren't calling to be a pain in our butt or one more nonsense call that we know isn't true, but they're experiencing some kind of crisis. And I think that it would help us process that call a little bit easier instead of getting agitated, which just agitates them. And I'm sure that you have your frequent flyers, right? All our agencies do. So it's more just to be aware, because in an area, and I'm not sure how you said you're in Sacramento?
I was at Sacramento, and now I'm down in more of a suburb in the Bay Area.
Okay. Hey, so I was just there a couple months ago when I was in LA. Yeah. Well, ish, you know, they're all the Bay Area cities there. So at any rate, I think that it's important for us to recognize those things. So one of the things that really bothered me when I started researching this was it takes, at least for where I live, in the agency that I was with, if someone needed an on-site counselor, it was going to be a minimum of an hour and a half. And that's after we've already got first responders on scene. And so then the responders that show up are tied up waiting for the on-site help. Or there's limited space at the hospital, so we could take them to the hospital, but then if they didn't have a bed or a place to put them or somewhere where they would be safe, well, then they are still in the custody of the law enforcement personnel or the fire personnel until we can get a counselor on site. And that's taking away from the time that the responders are available to respond to other emergencies. It increases the time and stuff that the dispatchers are needing to do to coordinate, like, where are they going to go? Where's this person going to be? Because we always seem to be the middle person, right? Even though those guys talk to each other directly, but that's a whole other show.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things that I wanted to, if you were going to give me this platform, I wanted to be able to ask other dispatchers that listen to this, just remember that when people are calling you, it's not personal. They don't know that they're talking to Ashley or that they're talking to Susan, that we're just a voice that you need to send someone now. Right. And it's hard, at least it was for me, to really learn how to separate that.
Yeah.
Secondary to that is to maybe just exercise a little bit more. I don't know if care is the right word, when you first realize, like, oh, this person is having some sort of mental health break, and they are not purposely calling me like a prank call. They legitimately do not know who else to call.
And I think this is important because, I mean, there's so many layers of this, right? Is that because there are limited mental health services, preventative, and so forth, a lot of the times the response falls on law enforcement to respond first, to assess the situation, especially if there's a violence, the potential of violence or a weapon involved and things of that nature. And then that can escalate. And we know, we've seen it all over the place where those type of situations escalate because, like you're saying, we don't have proper services. Our officers are there for crimes in progress and things of that nature. They're not necessarily trained for a full-on mental health crisis the way a counselor would be trained. So I know there was a lot of discussion, and I kind of heard some pushback when I was seeing people talk about it, about departments that are creating these mental health response teams that they're dispatching out, that if there's no violence, if there's no weapon, if there's no anything like that, someone is just having a straight mental health crisis, dispatch was dispatching out that team the same way they would an officer, and they would go out and respond to that. Now, if there was a mention of weapons, this, and that, they would send officers first. Officers would get on scene and go, oh no, they're not a threat, they're not this, they're not that. Put it back on the board for the mental health team. I'm all for more resources. I'm always for more resources. All that equals more jobs for folks who have the skills and abilities that I do not have, that my officers don't have. And having some kind of response like that frees up my officers to do the things that they're supposed to be dealing with, and then furthermore, if a team like that was created in a rural area at a rural department, you're going to get faster response for the situation with violence or without violence. And again, frees up the officers and hopefully gets this person some care where they can level back out.
Right. So that they aren't constantly stuck in that cycle. Because that's the other thing is the answer is to, oh, well, we'll incarcerate them. So we've criminalized this, and then they end up in that cycle, and the recidivism is insane when you look at the statistics. So, but so many places through the research that I've been doing have implemented successful programs. Now it's difficult to measure success when you talk about that, because then you're expecting like self-disclosure that it was a mental health issue. There could have been some underlying things. But there are programs out there, but it takes money and education. We have to educate not only the public that these things are out there, but we have to train our staff.
Yeah.
so that they are aware that these resources exist.
Mm-hmm.
Because right now, at least what I've experienced is it really literally is like, oh, we'll put in a call and we'll send someone, right? And like you were mentioning, if there's any mention that there could be some kind of violence or criminal activity, then we do have to send police as well, or law enforcement as well. And now we've got everyone tied up on one incident. So yeah, it really comes down to being able to educate.
It's true. Not only us as dispatchers, but citizens as well. Because I've had plenty of citizens who are like, no, like my loved one just needs an ambulance. They're having a mental health crisis and they don't want police. And it's like, ambulance isn't going without us because of certain things that are said on a call, certain things that are mentioned. They won't go unless we go. Like, and I tell, you know, my units usually when that's kind of the situation, like they just want an ambulance, but you know, they're asking us to go because it meets the criteria. And it's just one of those things, like you can't have one without the other right now in a lot of areas. And folks are just looking for mental health services. And then the police show up at their door. You know, that could be intimidating for some people.
Absolutely, and, yes.
You know, we definitely need, in my personal opinion, I love the idea of having mental health met type of responses that free up my officers. And I know that's scary for some dispatchers where you're just putting more work on me. I'm dispatching a whole nother thing. You know, but in reality, when we get more resources, we get more technology. It's a growing pain. It hurts a little bit. We don't like it. But for the most part, more things, more options, more choices help in the end. But we got to go through the growing pains, you know?
Exactly. And I'm probably going to screw this up, but the phrase that comes to mind based on what you just said is, if the only tool you have is a hammer, everything looks like a nail.
Yeah.
And so expanding our toolkit is going to be tough, right? And you're going to have to remember, and that's the other thing. We have to do a better job of continuing our education, right? And that's one of the things that that really drew me to your podcast to begin with, is because it does continue my education in this field. It helps broaden what I think about and my perspectives. Listening to people that do this in a whole different geographic location, you have a different set of problems, but your solution might actually be a solution that'll work for us.
Yeah, I talked to someone who was telling someone how to get a bear away from them. I'm like, I would never. I'd be like,
you're like, what?
Yeah, you shouldn't have been in the woods anyways. You know what? You belong to the bear now. I can't help you.
So an agency that I was at a couple of weeks ago, the people that call in, a lot of their concerns, because it's also another rural area, were about ducks that were and geese that were laying their eggs in the Target parking lot, and they were concerned that people were going to run over them. And I remember the first call, I was like, are you kidding me? Is someone punking me right now? Is this a real call? But it's legit for their area, right? Like,
yeah, we actually had randomly where I work, there is a lot of open space. I wouldn't necessarily say it's like forest or anything, but there's a lot of open space. And there was like this family of ducks that fell into the sewer drain, and people were calling. They're like, can someone come get the ducks? And there's actually a department, I can't think of their name right now, who respond out for duck crises. Well, not just ducks, but I'm going to call it duck crisis. It's basically like something that's man-made that created a hazard for the duck, like falling into a storm drain.
Wow.
They go out to pick them back out because it's something we created that caused an issue in their
Wow.
This is really weird. But you get calls like that, and dispatcher just like, let me put you on hold. I don't know if we go out.
Right. Let me find out. I don't know what the answer is, but let me ask someone.
Exactly. Right? A go-to line. Oh no. Let me ask my supervisor.
And then you put them on hold, and then you turn around and say to the room in general, what do we do with this? I don't know what to call this. Yeah.
Right. And like for my first half of my life, I worked graveyards. And I would come in to work these random day shift overtimes because I just lived right around the corner from my comm center. So I was in there all wild hours. Mm-hmm. I swear, I would walk up to my supervisors. They were like on an island, like 6 times during day shift. Like, I don't know what to do.
Oh, because
day shift's weird.
Are different than day shift problems.
Oh, it's so different. Nighttime's like, I got shot in the leg. Like, all right, we're sending help. Day shift's like, I got this thing and I'm not sure if you can help me, but, you know, and you're just like, I'm not sure either.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I try to avoid day shift. I'm finally off day shift. Got my first week of the swing 10 to 10 under my belt, and I am thriving. Working out before shift.
Right?
I'm energized.
Yeah.
It's so
when I was younger, it was, I still got off early enough that I could go party. But then still be at work on time, right? Because I could sleep in a little bit. So yeah.
I do have some day shifters at my job who are just like, you know, I want to get off early so I can go out. And I'm like, I'm taking my ass home. Just straight home. You can have that shift.
Right.
I want to be. It's a work day. I want to work out. I want to work. I want to go home. That's my process.
And then look at you putting all of these other things in there. Those are so very exciting. When you were talking about the Gold Line Conference, I did register for that.
Oh, amazing.
So, I was very pleased that if something comes up, because my schedule is changing, you know, from week to week. So I was really excited to know that I could still view it afterward. Even if I'm not able to attend during the actual live time. So
it really is. It really is one of those things that I really love about our community, how there's so much access to these virtual platforms and conferences. I know Gold Line's doing it. I know Ricardo at Within the Trenches does his Dare to Be Great conference. And there's just all these opportunities, especially for someone like me who's kind of just starting to get into let me get out into the conference circuit and say something that hopefully lands on someone and is impactful. It gives a kind of a baby step opportunity where I can do it in the comfort of my home. Like I'm now with my camera and kind of go through a presentation. And it does just allow all these opportunities to hear all these different speakers that some departments don't have the access to send folks to, you know, APCO and NINA. They don't have the staffing, personal funds, you know, people don't have the funds to go. So having these virtual conferences it's just so important to be able to reach dispatchers all over the states, all over the world even, and be able to share information, skills, tactics, phrases. I know you're doing your best. I mean, like it could be that simple as something you pick up in one of these conferences that I really do encourage. I'm a little biased, obviously, because I'm presenting in this one, but in general, even ones I'm not presenting in, just register for them, because you could go through on the back end, check out the recordings that really hit you, and be able to just get information at any point, you know? Right.
So when people, if their center would allow, if it's, you know, a slow time, then they could watch the information then, or like I would do is it's what I would look at when I had my free time, because that's my reading, my me time. And that's about improving myself and, you know, giving myself better skills, more skills to do what I do now.
Yeah. So. And I mean, to round it out to, you know, the mental health aspect, and I would say that the majority of our calls, I would say, are mental health related, right? Because we're getting, in California at least, a lot of unhoused folks, a lot of transient calls. And if we unpack that, you know, that's most likely stemming from mental health, you know. Mental health folks don't have services, utilize sometimes drugs, alcohol to numb certain symptoms, can't function in everyday society and end up homeless. And then folks don't like seeing the unhoused folks in the neighborhood, and they call us. And then officers respond out, because if it meets whatever criteria, and then you move them down the street, and then you get another call about the encampment down the street. So they all feed into each other. I mean, it's a social situation that, we're not going to fix in the dispatch center, but having that understanding, I think that's kind of the point you're trying to make, is that realizing that this isn't the person's fault that they're having this crisis.
Right.
And having that compassion for them.
And so in the way that we have made first responders now, now you're also in charge of mental health response, right?
It's true.
Dispatchers and we have always been, at least from my experience, and I'm sure you can relate to this, oh, my power went out. Well, but I'm not the power company, or I don't have any water, or, well, so you have to call the right resource, but they call us because they don't know what to do, right?
Man, I had during the storms, because California went crazy this year. I don't know if anyone else noticed, but we were not okay. It was wild. And I had someone call, and they were like, my power's out. I was like, okay. Do you know why? Nope. Why not? Because I work for the police department.
Right. Thanks for giving me the heads up, because now I know hundreds of people are.
Yeah, now I'm like looking at the PG&E map or whatever our provider is in our area, and like, oh, okay, lights go out, and just people. It's funny working in emergency services, because you just kind of realize how unprepared the majority of people are to respond to simple crisis, such as the power is out and you're driving on the road, which means the lights aren't on. It's like, what do?
I know where you're going with that.
You treat it like a stop sign, right?
Right. And they're like, what do you mean?
Yeah, these lights are out. And it's like, when you're like stop sign. Like, like my officer isn't going to, they're not electricians. They're not going to go out there and fix it like that. Right. The power's out, the power's out. Or the storms, this one, I'm not going to lie, this one was really bothering me. We have the storms going, and I work in a much smaller city now. And people kept calling because the drains were getting backed up, so it was causing flooding. And in my head, I'm like, well, it's raining all over the city, obviously. So much that the leaves are getting into the drain. And it's possibly going to affect my house. I'm going to be out there in my little raincoat getting the leaves out the gutter. Mm-hmm. And you tell that to someone because, the whole city's flooding. And we don't have that many people, we can't be everywhere at once. You're like, and they're like, well, that's not my job. Well, the people whose job it is, they're working on other jobs right now. So we got to problem solve ourselves a little bit when we're capable of. And leaves in a storage drain, we as people, we as community can assist with that when we're backlogged, and that one was really getting me frustrated. I was like, I'd be outside with a rake. I don't know. That's just me.
Right. So, it's interesting that you say it that way, because we do, I'm sitting here thinking to myself, we actually have like powers, because, people call us for these things because they don't know what to do. But some of these things, I probably would have done the same thing if this wasn't the field that I went into, when I was so young. Yeah. But one of the things I love to tell people is like, I would have never thought to know what direction I'm heading and what highway I'm on and what mile marker I just passed. That is a dispatcher thing, right? And so when these people call, we are expected to be the encyclopedia of, well, maybe see, I am dating myself. We're supposed to be the good.
I'm loving a good encyclopedia. I grew up with them. I know. I like a good encyclopedia.
But we're the ones who have to figure out, well, let me help you fix your problem. Let me help you find someone to do this. So in a way, that's kind of like a little superpower in my head.
It is. It does remind me Ashley, you're doing okay. You have good knowledge, but it also reminds me that we in this field have a role, or I dare say duty, to educate every opportunity we get. And it could be as simple as, hey, have you tried going and taking your rake out to the sewer drain? Because I'll put you on the list, but I don't know how long it'll take for them to get there. And you're right. It might not have occurred to them, that that's something they can do. And when it's my 120th call on the stewards, it can be super frustrating for us, right? But I think that's when we have to cue back into the things that you're talking about, is having that compassion and understanding, even when it gets hard in our comm centers. Because I mean, I think we've all done it, where it's just like, we're getting swamped and you're calling me with this, you know? And it's real and they don't know, you know, but I do. I'm feeling it. And I think it's hard sometimes to be really intentional with that, but it's necessary.
I like that word too. Be intentional. No, it's if anyone who knows me knows that I have like a million Post-it notes all over everything. And I just like to write little things that speak to me so that you can go back and look at them, right? And kind of recenter and remind myself, like, this is why I do this. When it's the 121st call about this, I can go, okay, I'm going to be intentional with what I'm doing. I am here to serve, and I'm going to do the best that I can. And it's not about me. And
it is true. Yeah.
It's a tough place to be, though.
Yeah, so, it is.
But I go back to, we have to take care of ourselves first.
Exactly. And like, me and Wendy Bundy are starting to do a monthly kind of wellness segment. We call it Wellness with Wendy, where it's a live stream. And we did the first one this month, last week, and it was on tapping and guided imagery. So she kind of took folks through guided imagery, what that looks like, and took them through a tapping session. And the tapping was really cool because you can pause at your console and kind of just do the tapping thing. And if it's your 120-second call, that is something that, if it works for you, that you can kind of implement. Like, all right, I'm going to take 30 seconds and I'm going to just do this little tapping routine, center myself, and pick up the next call. And
now, can I find the link to that on your site?
Yes. So it's awesome. the last episode of this podcast. It's also on YouTube for the visual and on Facebook. So you can grab it, all of those places. It was the first live, so I kept telling Wendy, I was like, I don't know what's going to happen when I push this live button and create it, and I don't know. So I figured out that it creates an event, and so we're going to post it earlier, but
I was worried about, oh my God, is this live? Because I might say something that you're going to be like, can't say that.
For anyone who's thinking about coming on the show, don't worry, I edit, so we can go on the back end and take anything out. So don't be nervous. Come talk to me.
You're going to make me sound like a genius when you edit this. I know. Good.
I don't know if my editing skills are that good, but it's so true when we talk about mental health, and really, again, being intentional, because I think that's kind of the hard part. Like, I think a lot of us in this field have that basic knowledge because of the field we're in, but it's doing the thing, you know, like being intentional, like, okay, after an hour, I'm going to stand up from my slouch. This is me. I'm not going to lie. This is me at work all day long.
Right.
You know, I'm going to be intentional about, okay, the hour mark's up.
Right. My watch even tells me, hey, it's
I
time
know.
to
And I'm like, why are you talking to me right now? I don't need to hear.
But I don't do it. Right. And I'm like, oh, I'll get up in a few minutes. And then a couple hours passes by. Yeah.
Yeah. So just that intentionality, it is super important. It is kind of what I'm trying to do in my personal life now is just being really intentional with the workouts and not even, because I think a lot of us, when we try to get into routines, even eating better, we like to count and track and monitor and give a score to how we did that week. Mm-hmm. And I'm finding that challenging where I am right now, because there's a certain level of, oh, I failed, right? If I don't hit a certain mark, and that doesn't feel good. No. So all I'm doing now is I'm just on work days, I'm working out before work, and I'm going kickboxing twice a week, and I just have it on my calendar.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. I do advertise kickboxing. It is a good time. Okay. But I'm just doing it. I'm not like putting my watch on and tracking my workout. You know, I'm just simply doing the thing. So when I look on my calendar, it's there. I know I did it. It counts, you know? So that's kind of really been helping me. Like, I'm not weighing myself. I'm not counting. I'm just doing the routine and seeing how my body responds to it.
And how you feel, right?
Yes,
Like
how I feel.
Get
how
up
I feel.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm monitoring it that way. And I think for folks who have a hard time and get caught up in that routine of calorie counting and, you know, watching how many calories you burned and all that, I give that advice to you as a former college athlete who used to work out 4 or 5 times a day. This is really working for me. It's helping me kind of get back to that lifestyle in a way where I don't feel like I'm failing or I'm not doing enough, or like, no, I'm doing it. I'm doing what I said I would do on the days I said I would do it. And that's been
good
really
for you.
helpful.
That's the hardest part, right? Is sticking to it, because
It really
our
is.
lives do change. People do, hey, someone's sick. We need someone to come in and do a 12-hour shift. Like, and things just change instantly. And no matter what plans we've made, we will drop what we're doing and go in and do the thing that needs to be done. So
it's true. Even yesterday, you know, I had my plan. I was going to go where we live like a block away from the water. I was going to go do my walk and do my little run. And my coworker texted me and she's like, hey, I'm not feeling great. Can you come in early? And I was like, it wasn't a mandate. I was like, I'll be there as soon as I can because I got to go do this because I'm being intentional about it, right? So I went, did my workout, grabbed my stuff, ran to my car to go relieve, and I was able to relieve them at least an hour early. So when able, also prioritize ourselves as well, because for that situation, it wasn't a mandated come in. I'm trying to do a solid for my people, which I always try to do as well. But we can forget ourselves a little bit sometimes. So that was an example of that intentionality, what I'm trying to do, but still got my workout in and still help my people. So you can do both, but you just got to put yourself first.
Absolutely. Yes. 100%. I agree with you.
Amazing. All right, let's see. So just kind of summing it up, and I know you answered the advice you would give to someone, but how do you feel this job has changed you?
So I'm not great at conversation because everything is like, right? Like I need to know all the things so I can get someone out there, like, you know, in and out. So I'm not the best generally.
I do tell my fiance sometimes, and she's telling me, I'm like, you're losing me, babe. You gotta get there quicker.
Yes.
You gotta, come on. I'm just giving you my 5-minute warning. We're reaching the limit here. I need more.
Right. And then I think the other thing is, I've always been like an OCD type A personality. So that part didn't change, but I've kind of gone through this cycle where, you know, I thought young and, you know, bright eyed and like, oh, the world is great. And then into the, oh my God, people are such pieces of crap, like just very cynical, you know, because that's what we hear all day long is bad stuff. Like, it's very rare. It does happen. But when someone calls and just says, hey, thank you, I appreciate what you guys do. And now I'm kind of coming back to the other side of that where, and I don't know if it's just because I'm getting like older and I have a obviously different perspective than I did when I was in my 20s and 30s. And now that I'm nearing 50, like, you know, there are good things in people. And I think I just have a little bit more understanding. And I practice a little bit more of just exercising compassion for what someone else might be going through. And it doesn't mean that I'm owning their problems, but I can examine it and be like, oh, well, this is probably why that they're behaving this way. And I can't fix everything for everyone, but I can certainly reconcile those things for myself so that I'm not looking at the world as just this negative suck, right? Like,
yeah. And I mean, we could I know I've been in that place sometimes where I'm just like, every call is just trash and, you know, the world's scary and, you know, there's things that folks don't realize are more common than they may experience in their everyday lives, and that can be tough, and that's a lot of weight to carry. But I do think, like you said, we need to acknowledge all the good that we hear too. I mean, we hear some amazing stories from amazing people, and even with the dark stuff, I mean, that's always going to be there. You know, it's not a war we're going to win. It's kind of one of those things that no matter how many folks you put behind bars, how many people you arrest, I mean, there's always going to be a criminal aspect and a dark aspect of the world. But there is so much light, you know, there is so many good things. There's the folks who do the work, you know, there's, you know, podcasts and things like this out there. There's so many ways to impact the world and bring some more light into it, even though we know the dark does exist.
Yes. And so your podcast is a perfect place to highlight, like we are showing, like, yeah, we're people too. We feel things. It's not a robot answering those calls. But we're doing the best that we can to be the good, right? When people don't see us, they don't see the dispatchers. And so that's another thing, when there are opportunities to give a shout out to all the dispatchers that are never seen and rarely recognized for what they do. I am so appreciative and really admire everyone who chooses this as their career path and then works to improve their community, their centers, and be a part of that. It's because we don't get the recognition that we should.
So true. And I think that is an amazing place to exit for this interview, because dispatchers, you do a tough job. You are appreciated. All we're trying to do is highlight the amazing work you do, and you're needed. Well, Susan, thank you so much for jumping on with me today. I've had a wonderful chat with you, and I imagine we're probably going to link up later.
I would like that very much. Yes. I was thinking that earlier, like, oh, I've got your email, so you can't get away.
That is correct. All right. I'll be right back with you, Susan. Thank you so much again.
Right. Thank you.
All right, everybody. That was another amazing episode here at Let's Talk Dispatch. Again, Susan, thank you so much for being willing to come on to the podcast and share your story, share your experience. As Susan said, and as dispatchers know, a large amount of our calls are now dealing with mental health. And I know that could be tiring, frustrating, especially when you're dealing with the folks who continue to call and continue to have the same crisis. But Susan is right. This is a service that we are providing, and there's not a lot of those services out there to help folks who are having mental health crisis. And especially, as Susan mentioned, in a rural area, that response is extended. So definitely remind yourself to be kind, have compassion, even on your long, tough days. It will go a long way for the caller. And I know as dispatchers, we don't get that gratification very often because we hang up and then it's handled out there. But just know that time you're spending on the phone with someone, whether it's a mental health crisis, an in-progress crime, even a non-emergency, is providing some type of support for that caller who feels they need assistance. So you're doing, honestly, a wonderful and thankless job. As I mentioned, check out goldlinesupport.com to sign up for the Gold Line virtual conference. And you can check out the raspydispatcher.com for everything and anything we're doing, from the podcast to merch. To be a guest, you can sign up there as well. And of course, to tell your story, you can submit that on our website as well. Or you could shoot me an email, ashley@theraspydispatcher.com. And with all of that being said, until next time, everybody, stay raspy. Thanks for joining us here on Let's Talk Dispatch. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and leave a 5-star review. Consider joining our Patreon for exclusive content, early access to episodes, and discounts on merch at theraspydispatcher.com. Follow us on Instagram and Facebook, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. All of these things help support the creation of more content, because the world needs more dispatchers. Thank you all again for the love and continued support, and until next time, stay raspy.